Okay, great. So yeah, you just mentioned fear of being rejected. So as you probably know, like that's probably the biggest reason why people end up in social anxiety because they don't want to feel like they're not good enough when they've been rejected. And again, that probably ties back to something that happened in their childhood where they felt like if they were rejected, they probably were made to feel like they just weren't good enough, right? So how do people really mentally overcome that fear? And then also, how do you move past the fear of being rejected, while maintaining that same enthusiasm? Because you are going to get rejected at some point, right? So how do you just mentally have that ability to just constantly move forward and be okay with it?
Fear of being rejected comes from an inferiority complex,
Yeah.
right? So if you're not being successful in making friends, socializing, and whatnot, at some point in time, you're going to start thinking that something's terribly wrong with you. Oftentimes, I find when I work with people in this predicament that nothing is wrong with them. They just don't have properly developed social skills, right? So it's an interesting dilemma or situation where I see a nice person and he thinks something is wrong with him and he's afraid of socializing. And I met somebody else who's on the sociopathic scale, who's just a terrible person. They do terrible things and they think that they're great people.
Oh, really?
Right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
I say to the guy, I say to the socially anxious person, you're a very good person. Trust me. You have to believe me. So it comes from that. And it's realized that just because you're nervous or you're anxious about socializing doesn't mean that you're a bad person in any way, shape, or form. And this is
Mm-hmm.
where media comes in. Media comes in, social media especially gives an exaggeration as to how you should be or what society expects you to be. Like if you talk to somebody who's very charismatic, somebody who's very funny, you don't have to be like that. That's not
Mm-hmm.
your calling. You know, you just accept yourself for who you are and be happy about that. So
Okay.
this is the conversation that I have. Say rejection is you shouldn't fear rejection. If somebody outright rejects you, that just means you and the person can't get along. You should leave that person alone.
Okay. Yeah, and then like a big part of this probably comes down to just doing as much as you can to put yourself out there with many people. Because when you do that, you'll eventually realize that hey, there's so many different kinds of people, and if someone doesn't like you, or someone just doesn't have that ability to really connect, as you said, you're just not compatible, right? So I guess it comes down to a numbers game as well to actually go out there and talk to as
Yeah,
many people as possible and get used
yeah,
to not connecting.
yeah. You can talk to as many people as possible, but the most important thing is that you have to come to accept yourself. You have to come
Yeah,
to accept yourself with
yeah.
unconditional and positive regard. And then you accept people with the same attitude until they give you a reason not to.
Hmm.
Right? So you have to accept yourself. You have to have this conversation like, hey, you're a decent human being. That's it. You're a decent human being. You mean no harm. And once they're able, the core of healing is once you're able to accept yourself with unconditional positive regard, then you're able to see other people the same way,
Yeah.
right? So when you're
Yeah.
interacting with people, there's no pretentiousness or anything like that.
Hmm.